And it wasn't until I actually started working at March for Our Lives that I really realized that it is because of my experience as a young person that my voice is valuable and is just as valuable as anybody else's. And that's part of the reason I decided to run for Congress in the first place. You know, I had some friends who came up to me and said, Maxwell, you should run for Congress. There's an open seat. I looked at them and I said, hell no, I'm not running for Congress. And, you know, a lot of the things my future opponents would say about me, I said about myself. I'm too young. I'm not experienced enough. I'm not ready for this. No one's going to vote for me. And I completely forgot about it and moved on with my life. And it was a few months before I actually announced, it was like in May or June, that, you know, they like planted that seed in my mind and I started to think about it again. I started having conversations with people across my district, friends, family, organizers, labor, teachers, etc. And I got to this place where I felt like, wow, half of the people said I could do this and half of the people said I shouldn't do this. And I was really at this crossroads. And so I ended up connecting with my biological mother. For people who don't know, I was adopted at birth. Now, up until a few months ago, I told the story, I would say I hit her up and learned about her because I wanted to feel inspired in this crossroad in my life. And then my mentor heard my speech a few months ago and was like, Maxwell, you're lying. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you looked into your biological mother because I told you should research her in case there's anything sketchy there before you announce your campaign. But like doing opposition research on your own biological mom isn't the best hook. So I was so inspired. I wanted to dig into my roots. And it was what I found out was wild. You know, growing up, my parents never kept from me that I was adopted. I just never cared to know anything further. And so my parents sat me down and they told me the story. And they gave me her Facebook. And I like stalked her Facebook for a whole night looking at pictures of her and my siblings and everybody. And then I see that we have a mutual friend. I look at the mutual friend and it's my barber of 15 years. So I text him, I'm like, do you know who this person is? And he calls me and he's like, Maxwell, how do you know who this person is? And I said, that's my biological mother. I just found this out about an hour and a half ago, by the way. And he starts crying. And I go, Chris, what's up? And he says, Maxwell, I know your mom. And I'm like, what do you mean you know my mom? We were best friends in high school. And when we graduated, we moved in together with another one of my best friends. I worked on Amendment 4 in Florida, which was the ballot referendum to give people with previous felonies the right to vote. I was the field manager for a year on that campaign with ACLU. And my barber, Chris, was a source of inspiration for me because when he was 17 years old, he made a mistake and he was never able to vote his entire life until 2020 at the age of 44 years old. And he said, Maxwell, that mistake I made when I was 17, I held up a gas station because your mother couldn't afford rent and she was about to be evicted. And I paid her rent. And that's the relationship we had. And he gave me her number, I called her, we spoke for hours, and I learned that I'm one of many siblings. I learned about the fact that she's someone who's been in and out of drugs, poverty, crime, jail, etc., not because she's a bad person, but because of the zip code she was born into. And there's this quote that I heard a long time ago that says we need to see the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable. And it stuck with me. It's something I'd always repeat to everybody I was with, my organizers, my staff, all the time. And I'm on the phone with my biological mom, and at the end of the conversation, he goes, Maxwell, the thing I just want you to know and take away from this conversation is that I had you at the most vulnerable point in my life. And hearing those words from a woman I had never spoken with in my entire life, and that woman being my biological mom, changed my entire life. And I hung up the phone and said I'm running for Congress. And something that I've realized now more than ever is that that notion of seeing the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable is something that is, I believe, almost inherent to young people, especially now, millennials and Gen Z, that want to see a world where we all have the resources that we need, no matter who you are, Democrat or Republican. I'm proud of the legislation we put forward, big, bold, transformational change I believe we need, and also the steps forward that we've introduced in a bipartisan way. About half of my bills are bipartisan. And in case you haven't been paying attention to Congress right now, it's hard to do anything in this damn place.